My name is Jeff Nicholas. As John just mentioned, I am the CEO, president, executive creative director, executive producer, a director, a janitor, an accountant, all of those things for Uprising Creative. I've got an amazing team that we work with on a daily basis, but as a co-founder, I've done all of those things. And when we started, there were two of us, and it required sort of all of our attention and all of our details. So I've had experience across the whole spectrum of being a freelance designer all the way through to running the agency, and we just launched Vehicle VR, as John mentioned. So a couple little intro points. What is Uprising? What is the Uprising Creative? We are a integrated creative and production company. What that means, for those who don't know, creative and production company, that's pretty easy. We do design, we do digital, we do experiential, we do video production, now VR. The integrated part of that is taking all of those pieces and putting them together for campaigns. So it might be something that touches design and digital or digital and experiential, but it's always taking all those pieces and doing something greater with the parts of that whole. We have logos, those are them. We have clients, lots of clients. We've been really fortunate to build a great client pool from, as mentioned, Justin Timberlake and Rihanna, Jordan Brand, AKQA, lots of agencies. It's been a great run so far. I'm going to play our reel just to give you a sense of the work in case you aren't familiar. This is old, so it's really music focused, and I'll get into that a little bit, but we haven't had time to update it because we've been super busy doing actual work, but hopefully you enjoy, and then we'll get into it. Thank you. So if, when we get to a Q&A part, if you guys have any questions about any of the projects or working with any of the artists or brands, I can answer some of them, but we can get into that. So why are we actually here today? Today's topic is change. And I wanted to kind of take this, I thought about going into case studies on projects, what it was like when change hits a project. I thought about, kind of diving in that way. And in doing that, I decided to take a broader approach and talk about how change has affected me in my career and how it's affected the growth of the company. We talk about change all the time. We hear, change is a constant, right? We hear, we're told to embrace it. We're told to use it for positive growth. I'm a firm believer in that. But as we all know, change takes many different forms, both positive and negative. Sometimes expected, sometimes unexpected. Embracing it can be hard. Positive change is easy, right? We all like when good things happen to us. Negative change or unexpected change can be much more difficult. The ability to use those unexpected and seemingly negative changes to shape our perspective or as a force for good in our life is sometimes difficult to see and understand. My time building Uprising over the past 8 years has been defined by lots of change. We've had changes internally, whether it be staff or it be the type of work that we're going after. Lots of external changes from the market, things changing, music industry dying, and then rebuilding. Lots of things that we've had to deal with. That's a given. It's always going to be that way. But it's how we sort of have adapted to that and reacted to it, I think, that's helped us thrive. We started as a two-man operation. We were design only. Album packaging, posters, promo collateral. It's really all we knew. And now we have 4 offices around the world. We've got 30 full-time employees. We work with hundreds of freelancers and vendors on a daily basis. We've got all these projects that run the gamut from design to digital, experiential, video production. All of that I knew nothing about when we started the agency, really. I just designed shit. I knew Photoshop. I knew Illustrator. And I kind of had some experience managing people. All of that growth came from really significant changes, mostly unpredictable ones. And I think early on we made a decision to try to be as fluid as possible, to adapt to those changes, to not resist them, to be like that stream that flows around rocks rather than getting blocked by them. That has helped us as individual creatives and as a company adapt and take on new capabilities and follow new passions. So my story. Up until recently, I'll get into that at the end, change has always been really easy for me. Partly because I grew up in a single-family household and we moved around a lot. My mom and sister would be mortified if they knew that was up there. I'm kind of mortified that it's up there too, but it is there. So look, it was a single-family household. My mom was doing everything that she could to try to figure out how to raise us, how to provide for us, and what she was going to do with her life. So that meant we moved to Virginia, then from Virginia to Florida, back to Virginia, back to Florida, new friends, new homes. It was constant change. And I think for me, that's what led me to embrace it. It was a way of starting over and resetting, and it became a part of who I was and helped me really adapt. At the same time, this is going to date me quite a bit, actually, personal computing was starting to blossom. I was instantly attracted when my mom got like a Tandy computer in the house, right? And all of a sudden, here we had this piece of technology that would allow me to do things that I didn't even know were possible. And part of that was getting into the ANSI art scene. So this is ANSI art. It was built block by block. This is a 24-line piece. You had 16 colors, a couple of blocks. This is pre-Windows, MS-DOS, a bunch of nerds sitting there putting this together. All I would do is basically smoke pot and sit here and build these things that took hours. And then we'd sell them for $5 to $10 maybe to an elite BBS, which was usually selling wares or porn or art, or not selling it, but providing it. And that was what I did from 14 to 16. In hindsight, I didn't really know it at the time, but that was really preparing me to run business. It's so crude. We were kids. We were just fucking around. And it was super primitive. But, and there really wasn't computer design at the time. This was early stages of it. But it did, following that passion, did prepare me for what I would eventually do. You can find a lot more of this. There's an archive called 16colors.net. And if you want to dig into this, there's hundreds and hundreds of packs. And these were from artists all around the world. So I dropped out of high school. Smoking pot turned into a lot of other things. I wasn't being challenged. Whatever you want to call it, I stopped creating and I checked out. Not a great moment of change for me, but at the time it seemed like the right move, right? All I wanted to do was party. All I wanted to do was hang out, and school was getting in the way of that. In a moment of clarity, I had a pretty severe overdose of way too much acid. I went back to school, finished before my class, and then decided I had to get out of Florida. So that move, that was another big change for me. It was like, it was really running. It was running from issues. And I said, I know the furthest I can get is Vegas, because I had a friend in Vegas. So I'm going to move to Vegas, and I'm going to go to school in Vegas. That was my reason for being there. Really, my reason for being there was partying. But that got me out of the house, and it got me out on my own. In Vegas, I started going to school for computer science. I switched immediately to design. I didn't realize there was a design degree. I didn't know anything about college. I didn't know anything about anything. And when I got there, I realized there was a graphic design degree. And I started going to those classes and maybe going to one class a week, partying a lot. I hadn't touched design for years until that point. I got back into it. I started working as a lead designer for the events committee. I started doing freelance art for local clubs, and that path seemed like it was getting set up. I had talent, I was getting paid, and this is intimate stuff, but I was in pain, I was lonely. I was burning bridges left and right, and after a couple of years, things got really complicated and really dark, and I needed to make another change. But for me, these changes were running, right? And what I found was a life on the road. So what happened, I had a really good friend, Joe Lucchese, who's still a great friend. He runs a great agency called Project out of Chicago. He was on the concert committee. My car had broken down on the way to the second Coachella. I needed money. So he's like, hey, I got this gig passing out flyers at this show. It was called the Boom Boom Huck Jam. And it was Tony Hawk and the Offspring, and they were doing all these crazy stunts along with music, and Bill Silva was the promoter there. So I'm passing out flyers, and the guy who's running that says, hey, if any of you are in a music program and you want to meet the promoter, he's happy to answer some questions about what it's like to be in the music business. Raised my hand, said absolutely, and next thing I know, we're at a private dinner with Jack Black. We're at a private Snoop show. We end up back in the lobby of the Mandalay Bay, me and a couple of friends and Bill, and we're asking him questions about the music industry. And flippantly, he goes, yeah, if anybody wants, I need an assistant on the road with one of my bands. And everybody there was like, well, I'm in school, And my hand just shot straight up. And that, for me, was the out that I needed. I was able to raise my hand and say, I'll do it. And 2 weeks later, I was on the road with Unwritten Law. It was my favorite band growing up in Florida, so it was like, holy shit, I can't believe this. It was debaucherous. A year later, I was out with Jason Mraz, tour managing for him, and things kind of blew up on the road. I was floundering. I wasn't following my creative passions. I was just out partying, and I needed to make change, but I couldn't figure it out. I landed in some trouble on the road. That blew up. Ended back in LA, no friends, no nothing. Bill was gracious enough to let me sleep on his couch and sort of put my life back together and saw something in me, I guess, because he gave me another job. I wouldn't have given myself another job, but he gave me another job, and I started to go into artist management. I was managing an artist named Gary Jules, who had a #1 with his cover of Mad World. We did Christmas #1 in the UK that year. It was fine, but I was missing that creative element. And again, all of these changes, some of these foisted on me, some of these are very bad decisions, but they all shaped kind of where I've been able to get to. I missed, I got the dates wrong on a flight, and Gary missed opening for Bob Dylan, and that was the end of my management career. Rightfully so. That's not the gig you want to miss. I was too focused on my side business, which was designing merchandise for bands, and I missed those details. I was mortified. That was a really hard time. I was confused. I didn't know where to go. I was in LA. I hardly had any friends. What I knew, though, is that following the passion, even though it was just merchandise design, it was just kind of low level compared to what we're doing now, that was making me happy. So, as everybody was doing at the time, I started a clothing line. It was a t-shirt line, screen printed. There were so many lines that came out at this point in time. It was like you would walk down the street and I'm like, I got a line. And that's what we did. My friend Darren Craig and I, who became co-founder at Uprising, we started this line. It did pretty well. We didn't have any funding. We were printing in my garage, hundreds of shirts screen printed at a time by hand. That sucks if you've ever done it. It was hard work, so we stopped. And to make up for the unemployment checks I was getting, I did design work on the side. Unemployment ran out. I was dating a girl who later became my wife, who was working over for John Silva, unrelated to Bill. John manages the Foo Fighters and Beastie Boys, Jimmy Eat World, Sonic Youth, the list goes on. They needed some temp help. I said, fuck it. I got nothing better to do. I got put on a job helping produce a Foo Fighters show in Roswell. We were flying a bunch of fans in for like a little private show and then flying them back. And I stayed there for 2 years. And that was a turning point for me. I finally made a decision to follow my passions through and through and turn what seemed like a temporary opportunity, what seemed like a temporary change, and worked with that team to turn it into more. I was doing most of the creative direction for those acts and those bands. I was helping with all the merchandise supervision, tour marketing, and it was great. It was fantastic. I was there for 2 years, and at a certain point, I just kind of felt stifled. I felt like I needed to go do my own thing. I kind of butt heads with people. I'm somewhat unemployable, as you can gather, and I had to start my own agency. That was it was like there was nothing else for me to do but start my own thing. So the way I did that, and this was another moment of change for me. I had met Dave Grohl. We had become friendly through working with them for a couple of years. He wanted to start a shoe line. And I latched on that. I was like, oh, Dave Grohl wants to start a shoe line. I'll run it. And I did that. We started a line. It was called Hooves Footwear. It was death metal Air Jordans. We released a little limited edition run. That got me out of SAM and into my own creative consulting business. I built that, a bunch of clients, enough so that Darren, who is now working at an agency out in New York, could fly back out to LA. We could cover both salaries. And from there, we built Uprising. We had office space that somebody loaned us. We were in like a hallway. It's somewhere in West Hollywood, and then we moved to another hallway, and then we got a closed door, and then, did what we could to just kind of scrape by. So that's my personal story, right? What then happened is my personal story really starts to merge at that point with Uprising and with our agency story. We've put everything into this business, and it's become who we are, for better or worse. We started heavily in music. It was all design. That's all we knew. From the outside, it looked like our company was growing and adapting, following the stream of what was happening in music. As things went digital, we started doing websites and interactive. As the bottom fell out of music, we started doing music videos and other content because labels were still able to make money off of that. And as the bottom of that fell out, we started to move into brands because brands have money. That's not entirely true. It wasn't like we were following trends like that. It just so happened that it aligned that way. Reality was we were following our gut and our passions. And we have severe ADD and we get bored really easily. So what happened is, as the company was growing and we were introducing new people into it and that culture was changing, our perspectives were changing and we wanted to do different things. We got bored designing flat artwork. That's why we went to digital, because it gave us a new way to allow those designs to come alive. We got bored with websites because websites are boring, and started creating interactive campaigns where people could interact, play a game, engage in some way. Same thing with music video. One flat frame. At a certain point, we couldn't tell the story we wanted to tell. Music was the lane we were in, so music video was the way we could tell those stories. And then from there, that got really stifling, because if you've ever done a music video, you have a lot of voices. And we moved over, and this is going to be kind of surprising, but we moved over into the brand work from there, because weirdly, the brands allow us to be more creative. They're less precious about it, and they're allowing us to thrive more than we've been able to over in music. Not with all brands, but with the right ones. You have to pick them. So really, we've just adapted and evolved. It feels like those changes were in line with market conditions, but I don't believe in coincidences. We've been following our gut, going where the road took us. We weren't analyzing it. We just went down those roads because it felt right. That's what's allowed us to grow and thrive. That's what's allowed us to embrace the change rather than to fight it. it's paid off. We've now got this agency. We're now faced with, where do we go from here? How do we pivot this agency? How do we continue to do what we want to do, even though our priorities have changed? I'm a dad now. I'm not that shithead kid who couldn't work with anybody. I got 2 mouths to feed. Everyone is getting married in our agency. You know, it's like everything is changing. The priorities are really shifting. So how do we keep up with that? And how do we continue to follow our gut when security feels like the change that we want now? So what's the point? Why am I telling you all of this, right? Part of this I share to illustrate how it's affected my career path, right? Some of the change was premeditated, some of it completely unexpected, some positive, some very negative, some very bad decisions. But all of it shaped me. And all of it helped me get to where I am now and helped me to do what I'm able to do now. I'm still an idiot. I still am just following my gut. I still don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. There are no experts. That's what I've learned, especially as a dad. I walk into preschool and I'm looking around and I'm like, these kids are 20 years old and they're watching I thought the teachers were experts. But the same goes for the business. The changes and the challenges, the growth, it's all interrelated. And we have to follow that gut and those passions and be able to embrace change rather than fight against it. So my hope today with sharing all of this is that I hope in some way it inspires you to embrace that change if you don't already, to let it shape your perspective and build your character. So right now, it's funny, when John asked me to speak, and then he said the topic was change, I sort of just laughed. I couldn't do anything but laugh. He had no idea how relevant it was. I'm in the midst of some huge changes right now, both professionally and personally. And like I said, married man with kids, the business isn't as nimble as I want it to be. It's harder to take my own advice and embrace change the way that I used to. Security creeps in, change gets scary. So preparing for this talk has, whatever it's done for you, listening to it, for me, it's really helped me see those current changes with fresh eyes and use them as a stepping stone into something new, and they don't seem quite as daunting today. So thank you.